for joining us for the 2019 Administrative Training Webinar. We're excited to see so many people joining us today. We just wrapped up our face-to-face trainings, and this is the last live training opportunity that we will have. But we'd like to just get started today and talk a little bit about all the great work that our sponsors in Kansas have been doing over the past 7 years. And on the slide, we have got a table that shows the amazing growth in number of sponsors participating, as well as the number of meals that have been served in Kansas from 2011 to 2018. So back in 2011, we started out at serving over 800,000 meals, and in 2018, we served over 1.42 million meals. So kudos to all of you for the great work that you're doing, and we're very excited and very positive that we will continue to make great strides in serving more meals as summer 2019 begins and as it progresses. So our webinar objectives are that, or I should say the singular webinar objective for today. By the end of the training session, participants will understand the Summer Food Service Program regulations to operate successful programs. We want our sponsoring organizations to be successful, and we appreciate your participation in the webinar today. We appreciate all the questions that you send to our team, and then please also make sure that if you have questions as the webinar progresses today, that you ask those questions. Don't ever feel that you cannot ask a question, because we want you to ask so that you can get the answers that you need in order to be successful. So our webinar is going to be broken into 3 topics: program administration, daily operations, and program finances. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Holly, and Holly will be reviewing program administration with everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. You should be able to see my screen pop up here in a little bit. So like Kelly said, today I'm going to be covering the program administration section of our training. So the first part of that is going to be program renewal. And as you all know, program renewal is required each year for all returning sponsors. And it is our first step to implementing the Summer Food Service Program. So you've all probably gotten into CanClaim and have started on your program renewal process. But if you need assistance, there are instructions posted on our website, that www.caneat.org, which is on your screen. And those are very helpful in understanding how to complete the entire program renewal process. There is a permanent agreement for summer, and school sponsors do not need a new program agreement. Your school program agreement includes summer. So we'll just have you upload your school year agreement to the CanClaim checklist tab. But if you are a non-school sponsor, we will need you to complete 2 copies of the program agreement for program year 2019 and send these 2 signed copies into our Topeka office. And then that can be uploaded onto your CanClaim checklist tab. So like I said, 2 original signed copies, and then send those into the Topeka office. If any of you are having a change in authorized representative this year, you will need to submit the change authorized representative form, and then that will also be sent into our Topeka office, and we'll need original signatures on that one. So once you're in CanClaim, completing those program renewal steps, you'll have the sponsor application, your site applications, and then the budget. So in order to get the budget to open up, you'll have to complete the sponsor application and all of your site applications. And you'll notice that data from the previous year will roll over into your applications. So you'll just have to update information with anything that's changed, and then answer any new questions in the applications. And like I said, your budget's not going to open until your site applications are complete. And this is because the budget will calculate your maximum reimbursement based on the number of days and the meals, the days you'll be serving and the number of meals you anticipate serving each day. And then once the budget is entered, you'll go to your checklist tab, and there will be a few required documents that need to be uploaded, and those will be noted with a red check mark on the left side. So you'll upload those required documents, and then a blue button will appear at the very bottom saying you can send it to your consultant for approval. So some other required documents for program approval include the training certification. So this documents the training for your staff that happened prior to opening your sites. And we have to receive these documents prior to paying your first claim. So we recommend having it uploaded to CanClaim by the end of your first week of the program. The procurement plan and code of conduct is also required. If you're a school sponsor, you don't need to do this for summer because you've already established your procurement plan and code of conduct for the school year. But non-school sponsors, I would recommend looking at your procurement plan for last year and using that as a guide. And then you can also reference Chapter 13 of Food Service Facts for any additional language or guidance you might want to add. The letter to local health department is also required, and this is just a notification to your local health department of the sites you'll be operating for the summer. And we have a link to find local health departments on the slide, and that's also in those program renewal instructions I referenced earlier. It's important to note that this is not a notification to the Department of Agriculture, or KDA. We, KSDE, will notify KDA of all the sites and the sponsors that do not have licenses, and then we receive funds from USDA to contract with KDA to complete inspections at unlicensed sites for the summer. So again, you don't have to notify KDA of your sites. We will do that for you. And then because the summer is such a short program, we also request that you upload or send us 2 weeks of menus and 1 week of production records so we can review and address any potential issues in the menu planning prior to food service beginning. And then there will also be additional documents unique to each sponsor. And again, we will send you an approval letter with the documents that will be required for each sponsor. Just a reminder that each authorized representative and each person who has access to CanClaim has full responsibility for their login, credentials, and password. We do not have any password information, so if you lose your password or it's compromised, you will just have to reset it in CanClaim. And then again, if you have a change in authorized rep, you'll have to send that form in to us and then register in the Common Authentication System to request access to CanClaim. And sponsors can have as many designated users as they want. So we always recommend if someone's going to need access, you don't want to share your login information. You can just set them up as a designated user. And we have a quick reference guide that's very helpful in understanding how to go about that process. So program renewal is one administrative responsibility we've talked about. But as you all know, there's lots of administrative responsibilities associated with summer, and we're going to cover each of these in this section of the training. So the first one is site determination. And as you know, the summer food service program is designed to provide meals and snacks for children in low-income areas when school is not in session. So as sponsors, you just have to be able to document that each of your meal service sites are operating in a low-income area that serves a low-income population. So sponsors will document that a site serves a low-income population using school eligibility data or census data. So if over 50% of a school enrollment are eligible for reduced price or free meals, any site within that area served by the school can use that school's eligibility status. And that school data is pulled from your certifiable enrollment data that is collected on September 20th. And then if you use that data, it has to be updated every 5 years, or at least every 5 years. And then area eligibility from census or community eligibility provision, identified student percentage data is also effective for a period of 5 years. So while it needs to be updated at least every 5 years, if possible, we say it's a best practice to update that data annually. So for census data, you can use census block groups or census tract data. So you can pull from the FNS area eligibility mapper or the FRAC food mapper to identify potential sites or areas where you would qualify using census data. And then you can also establish area eligibility using documentation from sources like departments of welfare, zoning commissions, USDA rural development, housing authorities, housing and urban development housing authorities, and local housing authorities. And then if you need any help establishing area eligibility for a site, you can always contact your consultants or anyone at KSDE, and we're happy to help. And then just a good note, as you're going through program renewal, if you need to inactivate or activate any sites or have a new site, that can all be done through Kelly, or you can send it to your consultant and we'll forward it on to Kelly. So one of the types of sites for summer is the closed enrolled site. And closed enrolled sites are open only to enrolled children or to an identified group of children, as opposed to the community at large. So if you have a closed enrolled site, you have to establish eligibility through one of two ways. Through the individual income eligibility of the children that attend the site, or through area eligibility. So if you're using the individual income of the children, you would need to collect household applications, and at least 50% of the enrolled children have to be eligible for free or reduced price school meals. However, if you do not want to collect household applications, you can document your eligibility status by using area eligibility information that we discussed on the previous slide. So if you're operating a closed enrolled site that isn't area eligible, you'll want to evaluate your potential participants to determine if you are going to meet that 50% requirement through your household applications. And if you're not 50% eligible, you'll want to seek other funding. So if you're a school sponsor, you could continue using the National School Lunch Program or the School Breakfast Program. Please also remember that accredited summer schools do not qualify as closed enrolled sites, so you would have to obtain reimbursement for meals under the National School Lunch Program unless that site is open to the community for meal service and you're in an area where at least 50% or more of the children qualify for free or reduced price meals. So if you are using individual income eligibility to establish that area eligibility for your closed enrolled site, the Summer Food Service Program is approved to receive information from sponsors about student free and reduced price meal eligibility. So rather than collecting the household applications on your own, you could contact school sponsors and ask them to release that eligibility status for the students that will be at your closed enrolled site. In schools, you're just recommended to complete Form 6A from Food Service Facts to request the information and then clearly show that both parties understand the appropriate use of the confidential information. So the reason we can use that area eligibility or that census data to qualify closed enrolled sites is because of this waiver. So KSDE requested and was granted approval for a statewide waiver for the Summer Food Service Program flexibility that was rescinded by FNS. So this waived the regulatory definition of closed enrolled sites, which required eligibility determinations to be made by submitting applications. So under this waiver, closed enrolled sites can now be determined eligible if they're located in areas where 50% of the children residing in that area are eligible for free and reduced price meals. And to apply for this waiver, all you have to do in your enrolled sites application is under eligibility data, it'll say there's a little button that says area eligible, and you'll select that, and then it'll just ask that you upload that documentation on the checklist tab. So we've covered our closed enrolled sites, and we also have open sites, and I'd say this is most likely the most common type of site in our summer food service program. And open sites post information about meal service and advertise this information throughout the community because all community children are eligible to eat at the site. And open sites are going to provide 1 to 2 meals or snacks free of charge per day. They'll serve children 1 through 18 years of age. They're going to assure that meals are available to walk-in children if there are any summer activities and field trips scheduled. So this just means that if you do have any field trips scheduled for your open site, that someone is still on site in case a child were going to come for your normal open site. And then open sites can choose to offer meals to parents and guardians for a meal charge or obtain non-federal funding to cover the cost of that meal. So it's important to remember here that you have your program adults. Those are individuals who are working directly with meal preparation and meal service, and their meals are an allowable cost to your food service fund. So you would not need to charge them or obtain non-federal funds. But parents or guardians would be considered non-program adults, and you would need to obtain, to charge them for their meal or obtain non-federal funding to cover that cost. Mobile sites are a type of open site, and as you know, traditionally summer sites are in schools, playgrounds, parks, faith-based organizations, community buildings. But with mobile feeding, this provides some flexibility for sponsors to reach children who don't have access to these types of facilities. So in rural areas, you might have children who are in isolated locations, or in urban areas, violence or traffic safety concerns might limit the access to meal sites. So a mobile site would be a great way to provide different options for those challenging situations. So in a mobile site, the sponsor would deliver meals to an area using a route with a series of stops at approved sites in the community. And the meal service has to take place on approved days, and the sponsor has to serve reimbursable meals during their approved service times. So it'd be just like your normal open site, but you're going to multiple sites and delivering your meals along the way. So with mobile sites, each location has to meet the site eligibility requirements or be area eligible. The meals have to be consumed at or near the drop-off location. Specific meal service times have to be established. The sponsor must be able to adjust their meal deliveries based upon fluctuations in attendance. And they also, because they're delivering these meals to different sites, have to take extra precautions with food safety. And very important to note is that the site supervisor must be present at each meal service and remain on site during the entire approved meal service time. So you can't just go to the site and drop off meals. Someone has to be there during your entire approved meal service time. Another sponsor responsibility is site oversight. So sponsors must complete pre-operational visits for all of their new and problem sites. Schools are not required to document a pre-operational visit at sites that are used during the school year, but it is likely that you might need to visit the site to focus on special issues associated with summer. So the pre-operational visit is just to make sure the site has all the facilities necessary to smoothly operate throughout the entire summer and smoothly serve meals within program regulations. So USDA requires sponsors to have control of all of their sites. So if a sponsor takes on a site that is not associated with their organization and has other volunteers or personnel assisting, an unaffiliated site agreement needs to be signed and maintained on file. So an unaffiliated site has to be operated as an open site or a restricted open site. It has to be located in an area in which at least 50% of all children are eligible by school or census data and be open to those area children. Meals have to be available to all children in the area on a first come, first served basis, and they have to be served at no charge. So if you mark unaffiliated site on your site application, CanClaim will require you to upload this agreement, and it will just be signed by the sponsor and the site supervisor to ensure everyone understands their responsibilities and that these responsibilities are clearly specified. Sponsors also have to make sure the meal pattern requirements are met, and you can see these are listed here on the slide. School sponsors do have the option to use the school meal pattern or the summer food service program meal pattern. And Chapter 25 of Food Service Facts provides information about required food components for each meal type with the minimum required serving sizes. And we'll talk a lot more about the meal pattern here in later slides, and we'll have some resources that you can check out if you need additional guidance on the summer meal pattern. But some good important reminders are that the 2 ounces of meat alternate has to be documented using CN labels or product formulation statements if the main dish items are purchased rather than prepared. And you'll want to review these labels every year just to make sure that what you have on file matches what you're actually serving. The 3/4 cup of fruit and or vegetable at lunch and supper has to be from at least 2 different sources, and juice can count as no more than half of this fruit and vegetable requirement at lunch. Juice has to be full strength, so to determine if it's full strength, you'll want to look for words like full strength, 100%, and reconstituted. Grains can be whole grain or enriched, and milk does not have a fat restriction, so it can be fat-free, low-fat, or whole. And it's important to remember that there are no age grade group differences in the summer meal pattern, so all of these on the slide are just minimums. You can serve more to older children if you like, but if you are going to serve children under 1 year of age, special permission is required to modify the meal pattern for these children. So I touched on serving additional food. Sponsors can serve condiments like ketchup, jelly, salad dressing, and mustard or cheese sauce to improve the palatability of meals. These condiments are not creditable, but they can be purchased with program funds. And again, sponsors can serve larger portions than the minimum required. There are no maximum limits, but just remember that excess portions do contribute to higher food costs, and meals with larger portions do not receive a greater reimbursement rate. They're going to receive the same reimbursement as a regular summer meal. So if you want to serve additional foods that do credit towards the meal pattern, you can purchase these with program funds. So as we saw on the last slide, at lunch and supper, you're only required to have 1 grain or bread. So if you served a sandwich with 2 slices of bread, you can pay for that extra bread with program funds. Or say you've already met the 3/4 cup requirement for fruit or vegetable with mashed potatoes and grape juice, but you'd like to serve more carrots in addition to that 3/4 cup requirement. You can pay for that with program funds. Now, if you're serving additional foods that do not credit towards the meal pattern, such as those high in sugar and sodium, like ice cream, potato chips, brownies, cookies, these are not creditable, but they can be purchased with or they cannot be purchased with program funds. So if it's not creditable, it cannot be purchased with program funds. We've gotten some updated meal pattern guidance from USDA, and they're allowing the crediting of some new items. So they recently released 6 policy memos, and those are all listed on the slide. But they're now allowing the crediting of shelf-stable, dried, and semi-dried meat, poultry, and seafood snacks. And more information on that, these are listed in the food buying guide. So if you want more information, those can all be found in the food buying guide now. And they're also going to allow program operators to credit coconut, hominy, popcorn, surimi seafood, and tempeh. So additional guidance can be found, like I said, in all of those policy memos. But these just allow for additional variety and enhance the appeal of meals to different populations. So I mentioned before that there would be some resources on the meal pattern, and here they are. So we have a 4-week cycle menu on our website that can be used that follows the Summer Food Service Program meal pattern. We also have an online training class that can be that you can take, and it goes through all of the meal pattern requirements. And then USDA's Summer Food Service Program Nutrition Guide is very helpful as well. So I would recommend, as you're starting your meal pattern or your meal planning, to check out those resources. Sponsors also have to ensure that they are civil rights compliant. So civil rights public notification requires that sponsors use the complete non-discrimination statement on their materials promoting the Summer Food Service Program. And the best place to find this full statement is on our website, at www.caneat.org, and on the right-hand side it says USDA non-discrimination statement, and you can pull it from there. The short statement, which is the last sentence, can be used for documents that are 1 page or less, or that have inadequate space for the long statement. And posted menus should have the statement because they are one of the most prominent ways that information about the Summer Food Service Program is distributed. Summer Food Service Program sponsors also need to inform potential participants of the availability of the summer program. So if you've started working on your sponsor application, you know that it asks how minority populations have an equal opportunity to participate. So responses might include making materials available in translation, or efforts made to contact minority or grassroots organizations about their opportunity to participate in the Summer Food Service Program. Sponsors also need to provide information in the frequently encountered non-English languages of those individuals eligible to be served or likely to be served in their area. And then ensure that translations are accurate concerning the availability and nutritional benefits of the program. Sponsors need to display the "And Justice for All" poster at the site and in their sponsor office. And this would be that green Lady Liberty poster. And just make sure it's displayed in a prominent location where your participants are able to see it. And then ensure that meals are served to all attending children, regardless of their race, color, national origin, sex, age, or disability, and ensure that all children have equal access to services and facilities at the site. And then make reasonable modifications in policies and procedures to ensure all individuals have equal access when accessing your program. So civil rights also includes meal modifications, and federal law and USDA require program operators to make reasonable modifications to accommodate those participants with disabilities. And this includes providing special meals at no extra charge to anyone with a disability that restricts their diet. So program operators are required to make these substitutions on a case-by-case basis, and only when supported by a written statement from a medical authority. So if the meal modification cannot be made within the summer food service program meal pattern. It needs to be supported by a written statement from a medical authority licensed to write prescriptions in Kansas. So that would be your licensed physician or a physician's assistant or an advanced registered nurse practitioner authorized by the responsible licensed physician. So we always recommend a team approach whenever you are addressing meal modifications. And to implement a team approach, you can start by developing procedures for your parents and guardians and participants to request the modifications. So have a process in place for how they would go about requesting these modifications. Train your staff and volunteers on your meal modification procedures and the legal requirements. Appoint your go-to person who can provide technical assistance on modification matters. And then assemble a team to implement these guidelines and make decisions on your modification requests. Sponsors also need to be determining their potential beneficiaries each year by the ethnic and racial category. This is another civil rights requirement. So if you've started on program renewal, you know that your site application is going to ask for potential beneficiaries, ethnic and racial categories, and you can get this data from public school enrollment or census data. And then during one meal service time, you'll want to categorize the attending children based on their ethnic and racial categories using visual identification. And this is part of our KSDE fourth week visit review form, that monitoring visit form. So that's why we highly recommend using that form, because it will prompt you to gather that data. And if you have any civil rights complaints, you'll want to document those using the form in Chapter 5 of Food Service Facts, and then forward these to USDA and your area consultant or the Topeka office. Civil rights requirements require that frontline staff receive your civil rights training. So frontline staff are going to be anyone who interacts with program applicants or participants or their supervisors. So schools, you have probably already done your civil rights training, but it's great to have a refresher as you go into the summer. And to complete this civil rights training, we have a form in Chapter 5 of Food Service Facts that can be used, or in the handouts that Kelly sent out, there's a civil rights training talking points page that could be used. And then in a few slides, we've got a link to our online training that could be used. So when you're going out to your sites, you're going to want to review for civil rights issues and make sure that these are corrected. When KSDE comes out for their reviews, we will be looking at civil rights as well, and then if there's any issues, we will document that as part of your corrective action. So along with civil rights training, you're going to want to cover just your general summer food service program operations and make sure all your staff understand their responsibilities. So summer food service program regulations require that no site can operate until the personnel at the site have attended at least one of the sponsor's training sessions. And then you'll want to keep original signatures of this training. And as I said earlier in the program renewal section, you're going to upload this document into CanClaim, and then we will be able to pay your first claim. So again, in the handouts and activities, there's a site rules and site management training talking points, and that can be a great guide for conducting your trainings. And then lots of other resources through USDA and KSDE, and I believe all of these are in the handouts and activities. And then on the bottom right is that link to the civil rights training that I mentioned earlier. So part of Oversight is also first week visits. So sponsors must conduct first week visits at their new sites and any sites that had problems or issues last year. And during this visit, you're going to just want to make sure everything's moving smoothly, everyone has been trained and understands their responsibilities. So as I mentioned, that first week visit just has to be done at your new sites and any sites that had problems last year. And the reason this does not have to be conducted at all sites is because of another waiver KSDE requested and was approved for. And this waives the requirement for sponsors to conduct site visits at all of their sites. So if it's a returning site that didn't have any issues last year, you can waive that first week visit. And to waive that visit, it is on the site application under field 61. It just asks if you are waiving the first week visit, and you can select yes if the site operated successfully last year. And then we have the fourth week visit, and this one is required for all sites, regardless of if they are new or returning, and regardless of how long they operate. So this one will be done within the first 4 weeks of the program, and again, it's for all sites, so even if the program only operates for 3 weeks, you'll still need to conduct that monitoring review. You don't want to do this at the same time as your first week visit. And again, you're just going to observe the entire meal service, make sure everything's running smoothly and that everyone understands their responsibilities and requirements. And then this is the one, again, where we're going to record that racial and ethnic information. And as you all know, conducting outreach in summer is very important just to make sure all your potential participants are aware of all your sites. So you can see on the slide all the various forms of outreach that are available. I know that social media has become very popular lately. And then we've got mandatory school outreach. As you school sponsors know, summer food service program outreach is required for all school districts. And the best way to do this is to use our locate a site near you link, and we'll have a picture of that on the next slide, I believe. But if you're a non-school sponsor, just know that schools are required to conduct this outreach. So collaborate with them to get your information about your sites out there to your potential participants. So here's a picture of that locate a site near you. And this pulls data from CanClaim, and it lists all open sites that are listed in CanClaim. So families can go on there, and it's categorized by city. And then you can also share the USDA Find a Site Near You phone number, their website, or they have a new text number. Families can text summer meals to that number on the slide. And again, there's all sorts of resources on our website on the slide. You'll go to Summer Food Service Program, Administration on the top bar, and it's split up by administrative forms, civil rights forms, and meal service forms. All right, I'm going to pass it on to Arlene.
Okay, let me get my screen started here. Oh. Okay, so we're going to talk about daily operations now. So this is what is actually going on as you're serving the children or getting ready to serve. So one of the main things you really want to do is communicate your site rules. This way everybody knows what is expected of them, and of course your staff should know so they know what to look for. There's posters and signs that can be used to communicate these rules. We have some that were developed that are on our website, so feel free to go to the website, or I think it's under what's new in the summer section. But you know, your rules should state who can eat, you know, when the meals will be served, so you need to have your times out there. If you're an outdoor site in, let's just say, a park, is there a place that you can go to, like a shelter, if it's raining in the park? So maybe you need some information on where to go if the weather is bad. Of course, what meals are you serving? There are some rules that allow the kids to take a item off of site, so you need to make sure they understand if they can do that or not. but also that they need to eat that meal, consume it on site, and also if you need, adults are wanting to participate if they can as well. When you're serving your children, you really want to just plan for one meal per child. You can claim second meals, however, only 2% of all second meals will be paid for. So out of every 100 meals served, only 2 would get paid for. So you probably don't want to really start thinking about providing a whole lot of second meals. So that's why we say plan for one. Make sure all the children that are at the site get their first meal before you start handing out a second meal. And the second meal really does need to be a complete meal. So it's not just maybe they want an extra fruit, serving of fruit or something like that. So make sure they're getting a full second meal before you count it as a second meal. You can alleviate second meals or sometimes even, getting extra food if you use a share table. That's where kids can place anything that is food safe, so it's unopened, it's unused. They can put it on a table and children can go over there and grab that item if they want something a little bit more with their meal. Once again, the share table is for children only, it's not for adults. So the children can be using that. But it's a great way to, save on some of your food costs because not every kid's going to eat everything that you are serving. So sometimes it's very nice to have this and without having to provide a larger portion maybe. Offer versus serve is a type of service that you choose, basically. The serve option is when you have your menu planned and each student would get all of those food items. And when you are marking the student or the child as having a meal, you are basically confirming that they took all items, that it's all on their tray there. Once again, the share table can be utilized with this. And it can only be used with breakfast, lunches, and dinners. It cannot be used with snacks. I'm sorry, it has to be used with snacks. It cannot be used, you cannot use offer with snacks. I'm getting everybody confused on that, and I apologize. Snacks can only be served. The offer option is also indicated on your site application, and you will provide some meal training, especially to your person that is counting the meals. They need to know what should be on a tray to make that tray be a reimbursable meal to be able to count it. So if you are having breakfast meals, you only have to have 3 components. You have to have a grain, a fruit, and a milk, but you need to have 4 different items from those components. That way a child can refuse 1 item should they wish to do that. They need to take 3 items from that. With lunch, you have your 4 components where we add the meat into what we serve at breakfast. You have to have 5 different food items from those 4 components for the child to select from. They need to take 3 different components, basically, not the items, but 3 different components to make that meal reimbursable. If you want to get a little more information on offer, we have some information on our menu planning training for summer food service. And then there's other information on USDA's nutrition guidance for sponsors. Once again, there was a rescission of offer versus serve being able to be used at non-school sponsors, but we did request a waiver for that. So if you are a non-school sponsor and you wish to implement offer versus serve, you just do that by indicating that on your meal service section on your site application. Okay, meal service to children and service times. The really important thing here is that you follow your approved meal service time. We look at that when we are coming out to do reviews to see when you will start service. It is also used by KDA if they were going to come out and use and do an inspection. So if you have to change your meal service times, you need to let us know so that we can get that updated with both KDA, but also updated in our Locata site near you in CanClaim. We can get that done very quickly because it updates in real time. So make sure you start at the time you say you're going to start and end at the same time. If you are serving meals outside of that, then those meals are actually going to have to be disallowed. So you cannot count those meals. Therefore, if you notice a lot of kids are getting there 15 minutes before you normally start serving, maybe you want to think about changing that time, and you need to let us know so we can take care of that for you. Okay, I think this might be the last waiver we asked for in some of the rescissions that we received last year, and this had to do with the time between meal services. And there usually has to be 3 hours between the end of one service and the beginning of another, but we did ask for this waiver, so you can basically apply for this waiver by filling out your meal service section just like before, so by listing the times that you're serving in there. Okay, so some of the rules that we've sort of talked about a little bit, but meals must be consumed on site. You can allow a child to take a fruit or a vegetable or a grain, something that is food safe, that's not, temperature controlled. That can be taken off-site later. It can be from their meal that they take, or it could be something that's on the share table. You do need to mark this on your site application, whether you're going to allow this to happen, because once again, we look at that when we're doing a review. Adequate supervision is necessary to do this because you need to make sure kids aren't running off with more than that one particular item that they are allowed to take. So, making sure you have somebody out there in the area where the kids are eating is highly important for this. Okay, so we have a couple exceptions to consuming those meals on sites, and one has to do with field trips. Field trip requests should be sent into KSDE, so you can send it into your consultant, or you can, if your consultant is out, call the office and see who you can talk to and send information to. We have a form on the website for the field trip request. As long as we know about it ahead of time, those meals will be allowable and you can claim them. An authorized representative or somebody who is authorized to sign the request should be on there. We will then sign it and get that back to you as well. We won't do any retroactive approvals, but if you send it in and let me know, or let your consultant know before the meal is going to be sent off and served, we're happy to sign off on those. So when you are making meals for those field trips, if it's different than what you're serving at the site that day, make sure you put those foods on your production record, and make sure you send a daily meal count form with those meals on the field trip. It's nice to do those meal count sheets maybe in a different color so that you can separate the meals that were for a field trip versus the meals that were served at the site on that particular day. So that's kind of nice. The other exception would be for extreme heat waivers, and this is for outdoor sites only. You mark this on the site application as well, and basically it's allowing you to not serve the meals at, as a congregate site. You allow the children to take that meal home, and that's because you have no control over any temperature, and you have this extreme heat warning, or when the weather service says that there's a warning. So you would select that on the site application. You need to document this. You can go to weather.gov and print off a copy of the notice that you're in extreme heat warning, and keep a copy of that with your documents. This will only be available on the day that this occurs, so don't think I'll go back into tomorrow and I'll grab it. You need to get it right away. If you don't have it, then we would have to disallow those meals that went home with those children. One meal per child can be sent home. You do claim them separately. One thing that sometimes people ask is, what if there's other children at home that didn't come? Those children cannot have a meal. You can't send meals home for children that aren't there. So make sure it's just one meal per child that is physically there. Okay, so required daily documentation. We're going to go over a few of these different things here, but obviously we want you to have menus because that's the biggest way to spread the word. Production records, something that tells us what you're serving and what that serving size was, as well as how much was made. We need our daily meal counts. That helps you with your claims, so counting at the time of service there. We also collect other information such as the time the first and last meal was served, and we use these when we're doing a review to make sure that you are claiming accurately. We do have production record forms, KSDE production record forms out there, and we have a daily meal count form. We do encourage you to use our daily meal count form. If you choose not to, we want to see what you are using because it's not always, we want to make sure it's collecting all the information we need. Our production records aren't necessary, but some people like to just kind of continue using ours because they're familiar with them, but there are other production records or types of keeping that information, ways of keeping that information, I guess. So the daily meal count forms. This is the responsibility of the meal checker. So this person will be recording these things that are listed here on the slide. So the time that the first and last meals were served. It should be the physical time that the first meal went out and when the last meal went out. So it can be a little difficult catching that last one because you might have some time before the service time ends, but we want to do that, so we want to make sure that you are serving within your appropriate food service times. There's a place to count first meals and a place to count second meals. There's places for program adults and non-program adults, and then also for those non-program adults, a place to document that money was collected. Recognizing a reimbursable meal and assuring that complete meals are served is extremely important here. So your meal count checker should be trained, and it helps if you go over the menu daily to explain what should be on a child's tray or plate that they can then mark off that child received a full meal, especially if you're offer versus serve. Make sure that adults also understand that no part of a child's meal can be consumed by them. If somebody is eating off of their child's tray, if an adult is, then that meal needs to be removed. It cannot be claimed for reimbursement too. Also, this is the person that might be making sure that there's not more than one item leaving the building or the site if you have not, if you're allowing that to happen. So there. This is just a nice slide to demonstrate how a menu isn't the same as a production record. So you can see a menu basically just lists what are the food items that you're going to be serving, whereas the production record, gives you a portion size that will be served. It also might include like the ketchup that you're providing a ketchup packet because of the cheeseburger, that kind of thing. And production records then will also should have how much food you did prepare, as well as you might put your temperatures on there and any food that was left over, the amounts left over. For food safety, we do require that you purchase safe foods from reputable food suppliers. I'm sure this really isn't a huge issue. But sometimes people might say, oh, here, I baked up some brownies or something, and why don't you give this to the kids? And anything that's prepared in a private home cannot be used or offered to the children. We want to make sure that the food comes from safe places. We want to know how it was prepared, and if it's cooked in somebody's house, then we don't know exactly what happened there. You can use fresh produce from either school gardens or farmers markets. This is a great time to use farmers markets in the summertime, because that's when, in this area of the country, we have a lot of produce out there. So feel free to do that and use those types of foods. Keeping your temperatures, keeping your hot foods above 135, or cold foods below 41, and if it should be frozen, making sure that you have those at 0 or less is really important as well. So double checking temperatures, maybe make sure if most schools tend to have thermometers in their freezers and refrigerators, so you may look at doing that. Talking about thermometers, make sure you have them available. Make sure they're calibrated. If you need help calibrating them, just let us know and we will help you out with that. I think that's one of the big things that KSDE will go out and find that thermometers aren't necessarily there, so make sure you have them out there. Using gloves or utensils when you're handling ready to wear or ready to eat foods. Also just making sure everybody is washing their hands, clean clothing, refrigerating or freezing leftovers, or getting food items back into temperature control if you have time between meal services, or if there's a lag, if you can get cold items back into the refrigerator for a little bit, that's great. We also want, cleaning up after the meals. If you're not in your own building, and even if you are, we really don't want to have a mess around. We want, if we leave garbage cans and trash flowing everywhere, it just kind of gives the whole program kind of a bad image. So make sure that you are cleaning up trash and emptying garbage cans, not only for image, but for pest control as well. Milk reservice, it is allowed to put milk on the share table. It can be reserved if it's only there for 30 minutes or less. If you have a bowl of ice that it can be placed in, that's great. That milk can either be served on the share table, like a kid can take it as another item with their meal. It could be put back and served with another child's meal. And it could be, basically, if you're going to do that, you need to put it back in the refrigerator. You should mark it in some way, shape, or fashion. So we suggest like an R or a slash mark, because we want it to go to the front and it to be taken as quickly as possible the next time you're serving a meal. Double check your expiration dates. Obviously, you want to monitor those, and if you notice one carton is going out and coming back a lot, you may want to eventually take that one out. So hopefully, though, if you're putting it in at the front so it's taken, you won't have this happen too much. We do have sample policy it's a standard operating procedure in our HACCP guidance and resources, and that's at rkn-eat.org website, and it's under food safety, so the information is there on the screen. If you have trouble finding it, once again, just let us know, we'll help you out. Some food safety resources that are out there. This is some other training that you should provide to your volunteers and staff. We have food safety for volunteers and students, food safety fact sheets through the Institute of Child Nutrition. There's talking points. The Kansas Department of Agriculture has a daily self-inspection report. If we are sending out the activity booklet, you would see that in your booklet there too, so that form is there. It gives you a good idea of what you should be looking for and checking on a daily basis. A new requirement is this labeling options for food packaged on site. This applies when a packaged product consists of 2 or more distinct ingredients or components and it's served in a self-serve style. So if you're not going to physically hand the product to them, it's just going to be out for the children to pick up if they want, then you must have some labeling provided. So it's basically for allergens, that type of thing. You can have an ingredient label posted there or put on the package itself. Maybe you have a sign or a counter card that can be placed right beside the product. If it's a recipe item, you can post that as well. An ingredient label from a shipping box can be displayed. All of these options are up here. Once again, this is when the child is doing self-service. It's not when you are, physically handing the food to the child. So they're picking things up on their own. We have been given permission or advice by the KDA that this particular sign is something that can be used. And so you can just put like the sign up on your, on the wall or something there. That way, if people want to know what is in some of this packaged food that they're picking up along on their own, as long as you can provide that information, this sign will work for you. So I think we are now ready for Judy to go over program finances.
Hey, good afternoon. It takes me just a minute because I'm on the conference line and I need to make sure that you are seeing the correct one moment. There we go. Okay, Arlene, give me a high sign when it's showing up correctly on your end.
It's looking good here.
Okay. Well, good afternoon. I'm Judy Neely. I'm a child nutrition consultant in the southeast corner of the state, and I do recognize a lot of names in attendance. I'm glad all of you are on. Today we're going to I will be talking about program finances and procurement. Reimbursement for summer meals does require accurate daily management and accounting of meals in order to assure that all meals served are correctly claimed for reimbursement. So in this section, we're going to discuss managing daily operations. In the section on program finances, we're going to review, make sure that there we go. Let's get all my ducks in a row here. So on program finances, we're looking at financial management and controlling costs. We'll be talking about budgets, procurement or purchasing, and also the SFSP administrative review. Required record keeping for all summer sponsors is very important, and managing finances and controlling costs starts with good record keeping practices overall. A record of expenses and income has to be kept to document the nonprofit status of the food program. For private nonprofit sponsors, this is separate from sponsorship. Schools will continue to maintain your monthly financial reports as the expense record, and this is what you complete monthly in CanClaim. But for non-school sponsors, a monthly financial report form is available and located in the administrative forms at the SFSP website on CanEat.org. If a sponsor has funds left at the end of the summer, those funds must be saved for the following summer or used within another child nutrition program. Sponsors must be able to account for the receipt of money, the obligation for expenses, and expenditure of all SFSP funds. Although it's not required to maintain SFSP funds in an actual separate bank account from other institution expenditures, the SFSP funds must be accounted for. So you must be able to pull those funds out under review so that they can be identified as having been spent or received from SFSP. Sponsors must ensure that all SFSP reimbursements are being used solely for the conduction of the nonprofit food service operations. Non-program and program components of the food service operation must be tracked separately. KSDE has developed, has developed a summer food service program ledger for sponsors to use, and that ledger is available on the Summer Food Service Program website under Administrative Form. So summarizing that, monthly financial report and can claim is used for school sponsors of SFSP, and a Summer Food Service Program ledger and report is available in SFSP on CANI.org for the non-school sponsors. To justify claims for reimbursement, sponsors must maintain the following records. You must have point of service meal count taken daily for each site. A lot of people refer to these as the cross-off sheets or the circle sheets or the head count sheets. Program operating costs, including food receipts and other costs. Program administrative costs, including administrative labor and supplies, and then keep track of all funds that are accruing to the program. Sources of program income might include reimbursement from KSDE, money collected for service of adult meals and donations. Any program income must be used to cover program expenses, and if you request and receive advance payments, these are not considered to be income into the program. Proceeds from fundraising can be used to fund adult meals. Funding adult meals is one way of encouraging families to bring their children to the SFSP site. Donations from civic groups and Ministerial Alliance and other organizations may be used to cover costs of adult meals, which would be providing a community service to families in need. Information on adult meals is entered on your sponsor application, fields 60 through 64. Reimbursement is paid for operating and for administration expenses. Operating and administrative funds do not need to be tracked separately, but the primary expenditures should be for operating costs. Costs that are not allowable for the use of SFSP funds must be paid for with other funds from the sponsor or with donations or other contributions. Unallowable costs might include extra food. I think Holly touched on this, such as ice cream, chips, candy, soda, anything that is not a creditable product in summer food service program. Cost of foods used outside of the SFSP. Meals served in violation of program requirements. Meals served to adults who do not work directly with the meal service at a site. Entertainment, fundraising, prizes, and vehicles. These are all considered unallowable costs to the food service fund. Consultants will request to review records of your income and expenses when coming for an administrative review. School sponsors maintain records within their monthly review summary. A SFSP breakdown is not required, but is very helpful for planning and interpreting to your local governing boards the impact of the program on the food service fund. Sponsors must maintain documentation to support the claims for reimbursement, and one of the primary documents to support claims for reimbursement is the daily meal count form. To ensure accuracy of meal counting and claiming, it is important to check meal count forms at the end of each day and week to be sure they have been completed accurately, legibly, and are signed by the person completing the form. Simple things like the last number being circled being different than the number in the box of total first meal can result in loss of reimbursement. Talk with your site staff carefully about how they will address erasures, corrections, any changes to information. During an administrative site review, the consultant will review a day's meal count and 5 days preceding. On a sponsor review, the monthly consolidation sheet will be reviewed and compared to the daily meal count form. A meal consolidation form in Excel format is available on the CAN-E website at Summer Food Service Program. And I believe the forms are forms 27L or maybe 27M. I believe there's 2 forms to choose from. These Excel forms will auto-calculate column totals, and you need to keep your consolidation sheets with your monthly records for review so that those can be matched up and reconciled when your consultant comes to conduct a site review, a sponsor review. All sites have claiming capacities based on the average daily attendance, which we refer to as the ADA, indicated on the site application. This means that the claim will error if more than the ADA times number of days served are claimed. I'm thinking I got off track on my slides. Maybe not. Okay. Your ADA can be changed if your participation begins to improve. Consultants can approve a capacity up to the level that is considered to be the maximum the sponsor or site is able to handle. Private, nonprofit sponsors have operated in this way in the past, and it now applies to all sponsors. So if you find that you are having more or significantly less attendance than what you anticipated, it is a good idea to adjust your ADA on your site application. Claims may not be filed until after the last day of a month. If your program ends in mid-July, the July claim cannot be filed until August 1st. The claim may be submitted within 60 days after the last day of the claiming month, but after 60 days, SFSP sponsors are not allowed to enter an original claim. KSDE processes payment vouchers weekly, months of the year, so the sooner you file your claim, the sooner you get your reimbursement funds. And do remember that 60 days does not equate to last day of the month, especially during the summer when we have 2 31-day months in a row with July and August. So 60 days is 60 calendar days. If you are revising an existing claim, you must complete the form with all of the correct numbers. Sponsors must submit a monthly claim or a combined claim within 60 days of the last days of operation. For example, if a sponsor operated for less than 10 days in August and the last day of SFSP operation was August 5th, the claim would include July and the claim would include August and July and would be due by October 4th, which is 60 calendar days from August 5th. It's a good example of where that 31-day month does not equate to actually the same day of the month being counted as the 60th day. Sponsors may not submit a combined claim for meal reimbursements that crosses fiscal years. In addition, state agencies must ensure that the correct reimbursement rates are applied for meals claimed for months when different reimbursement rates are in effect. Sponsors have the flexibility to combine the claim for reimbursement in the following ways. For 10 operating days or less in their initial month of operations with the claim for the subsequent month. For 10 operating days or less in the final month of operations with the claim for the preceding month. Or you can even claim 3 consecutive months as long as this combined claim only includes 10 operating days or less from each of the first and last months of program operations. So if you operate for 3 days in May and 20 days in June and 7 days in July, you could combine all of those claims into the June claim. And as always, remember that the last step to correctly and accurately filing your claim each month is to be sure you check the I certify box that is at the bottom of the sponsor claim. Okay, we're going to talk about the sponsor budget. This is something that has been required of private nonprofit sponsors for some time, but only more recently for school sponsors. So it has inspired a lot of questions. The sponsor budget now is an annual requirement for all SFSP sponsors to complete. It is reviewed and approved by KSDE as part of the program renewal process and is submitted in CanClaim. And the sponsor will complete the administrative and operating budgets, which include projected administrative expenses and information of how the sponsor will operate the program within estimated reimbursement. So it really just has you take a look at how you are going to spend the reimbursement funds that you anticipate receiving. The sponsor budget in CanClaim consists of 4 sections. It will be looking at your revenue, your administrative staffing plan, your overall expenditures, your operating expenditures, and any general comments that you have that would help us and you understand how your funds are going to be spent and received. You cannot use your sponsor funds for anything that is not on your sponsor budget. So you need to be sure and think about that if you have transportation requirements or plan to purchase non-food items with your SFSP reimbursement funds, that there may be a need for some comments to be made on your budget that would define those parameters. The first section of the budget is the revenue section, and this is what it's going to look like when you open up your budget in CanClaim. The maximum federal reimbursement for operation and administration is an estimation of the maximum projected reimbursement, and it's actually calculated internally within CanClaim based on the information that you enter into your site application with regard to the meals that you're serving and what your anticipated daily attendance figures are. If the expenditures exceed the projected maximum amount of reimbursement, then sponsors must indicate in line 3 what sponsor funds are available to cover any other expenses that are not going to be covered by projected reimbursement. Report your administrative labor in the administrative staffing plan section. Administrative labor refers only to duties that involve the planning, organizing, and managing of the SFSP. Operational labor, which would be cooks, food servers, dishwashers, transportation staff, is going to be reported under the operational expenditure section of the budget. This is what your expenditure section of your budget in your in CanClaim is going to look like. And program expenditures are categorized into administrative on the left column and operational in the right column. And remember that all program expenditures must be reasonable, allocable, and necessary to the SFSP. Program administrative costs are allowable costs incurred by the sponsor for planning, organizing, and administering of the SFSP. Examples of administrative, you'll notice line 13, says transportation. So examples of administrative transportation expenses would be staff mileage charged for driving to different sites to conduct monitoring reviews. Whereas operational transportation, getting meals to sites, might be reported in line 23. On the other side of the budget. Program operating costs are allowable costs incurred by the sponsor for preparing, transporting, and serving meals to eligible children. Operational costs include costs such as food costs, non-food supplies, including disposable plates, napkins, straws, so forth. Food service labor, the cost of transporting children to meal service sites, and you will record labor that is directly involved in the preparation or service of meals in line 18 or field 18 on the operational side of the budget. And then there is a field 27 where you will enter any comments that you feel would help me or your consultant or KSDE in general understand how any anomalies or situational issues that you might have with regard to your budget. We're now going to talk about procurement or purchasing. All procurement of food, supplies, and goods and other services with program funds by sponsors has to comply with procurement standards described in Uniform Administrative Requirements for Grants and Agreements. I'm going to give you some really good language here, but we do want to make sure you understand that this is all grounded in federal regulations. Uniform administrative requirements for grants and agreements with institutions of higher education, hospitals, and other nonprofit organizations located at 2 CFR Part 200 as well as 7 CFR Part 225. You'll find procurement standards specifically located in 7 CFR Part 225-17 and 2 CFR Part 200, 317 to 326. Anybody who wants to memorize those, I will send you the information and you can spend your time doing that. Child nutrition program operators are required to write a standard of conduct that's going to govern the performance of your employees and sponsors in general that are engaged in procurement with federal funds. The standard of conduct establishes policies and procedures in accordance with federal regulations 200-318 in the Uniform Grant Guidance. Sponsors must include in their code of conduct the policies and procedures that address, in particular, conflicts of interest for employees involved in the selection, award, and administration of the contract, the acceptance of gratuities, favors, or other items with a monetary value, and specifically what disciplinary actions will be applied for violations of standards. On the slide, we have included the citation from 200-318, and there also is verbiage on a good standard of written standard of conduct available on our county website, and we would be in chapter 13. We would be happy to direct you to that. To determine if you will use informal or formal purchasing procedures, the very first thing you have to do is find out what your school's small purchase threshold is, or what your sponsor's small purchase threshold is. The federal small purchase threshold has increased to $250,000, up $100,000 from last year. And what this means is that purchases over that amount must be formally procured. When the value of the food purchase, and that's for a food purchase, the state threshold for non-food purchases such as equipment, disposable goods, is $20,000, and that has not changed over the last year. But when the value of the food purchase is estimated at less than $250,000, then informal or small purchasing methods, which also can include micro-purchasing, may be followed. However, when the value of the purchase is estimated at greater than $250,000, formal procedures that result in sealed bids and competitive proposals must be applied. The most restrictive threshold between your sponsor's threshold and the federal threshold have to be followed. My experience has been that the sponsors tend to use the federal threshold of $250,000 and the state threshold of $20,000 as your own threshold of purchasing. And today we're only going to look at the informal side of the flow chart, which is the left side of this particular branch of trees that you're seeing on the screen. So let's talk about micro-purchasing. The micro-purchasing threshold has increased to $10,000. It's up from $3,500 this time last year. For micro-purchasing, the aggregate dollar amount cannot exceed the micro-purchase threshold of $10,000. That's one stipulation. Micro-purchases must be equitably distributed among qualified suppliers. That's another stipulation. And finally, they may be awarded without soliciting competitive quotations if the price is considered reasonable. So you need to include this in your procurement plan. School SSP sponsors have a procurement plan already in place because this is a part of your program renewal process annually. Non-school sponsors must also submit a procurement plan, and we do have prototypes available with these procurement plans on our website. As I mentioned, when the purchase price has been estimated to fall within the applicable small purchase or informal purchase threshold, then written specifications must be developed and the sponsor obtains quotes from an adequate number of responsible and responsive vendors. Documentation must ensure the purchase was necessary, reasonable, and allocable to the program, and that contractors provide what was requested at the price quoted. Informal procurements may be completed in many ways. You may use your telephone, your fax, your email, printed advertisement, internet, or even in person or over the phone, where you call and say, give me a price on this item. Here's what I want. These are the specifications. The price quotes do need to be documented by saving the submitted information and making notes for your procurement file. Award your small purchases to the responsive and responsible bidders with the lowest price. Responsive indicates that the vendor submits a bid that conforms to all the specifications and meets the terms of the solicitation. Responsible means that the vendor is actually capable of doing what it says as performing successfully under the terms of the award. Documentation must ensure that the purchase was necessary, reasonable, and allocable, and that contractors do provide what was requested at the price quoted. This sample quotation worksheet is available on candy.org in Chapter 13 of Procurement Facts. And this little diagram shows the small purchase procedures. It's starting at the top of the circle. You draft your specifications, decide what you want. You identify and contact qualified sources, a minimum of one, that you need to have more than one in order to successfully compare pricing. So one plus however many more you wish to involve in the bidding process. Obviously, the more bidders you have, the more likely you are to get the best price. Evaluate your quotes, award your business to the responsible and responsive bidder with the lowest price, and then you do your due diligence to make sure that the products you bid on and awarded do meet the specifications you requested. In many regions across the country, summer brings us some new opportunities to source local foods. USDA loves local food sourcing, and we are very supportive of this in the state of Kansas. Sponsors may decide to target local products for inclusion in your program in order to increase the quality and appeal of meals, provide enhanced opportunity for nutrition education to program participants, and also, and very importantly, contribute to the local economy. Local foods can span the entire plate and can be included within all components of a meal. While fruits and vegetables are a logical starting point, don't overlook grains, beans, fish, poultry, and meat that can also be sourced locally during the summer months. There's a USDA guide for procuring local foods for child nutrition programs at the link indicated at fns.usda.gov/farm-to-school. Will take you to that link. Contact KSDE for federal purchasing guidelines that must be followed whenever contracting for meals. This is when you ask somebody from outside your organization to provide you with meals. A written agreement or a contract is required for meal arrangements with another entity. The vended meals contract prototype document is available on CANEAT.org at SFSC Administration Program Renewal. A unitized meal is kind of an unusual term, but a unitized meal is an individually portioned meal. It might be a sack, it might be a package, a clamshell, or even on a plate that includes a milk carton. Vended meals must be unitized because this format makes it easy to see that the vendor has sent and that the sponsor is delivering everything in the portion sizes requested. If contracted meals delivered from a food service management company are not unitized, a waiver from unitized meals must be requested from KSDE and approved by KSDE prior to your final contract negotiation. And as necessary, a contract should include how bulk foods would be unitized as a site. If you have questions at all as to whether or not your program, your contracted food service program constitutes a unitized meal, please do contact KSDE or your child nutrition consultant. Administrative reviews are arranged ahead of time by the KSDE reviewer. USDA may participate periodically in reviews, and USDA regional office staff do conduct unannounced reviews of new private nonprofit sponsors. Real quickly, I want to run down, and I think you'll find this interesting, some administrative review frequent findings during the summer. Serving outside the approved time frames, and remember you set your time frames on your site application. Claiming the same number of meals as ordered and delivered on the transport sheet consistently, meaning that the exact same number of kids show up every single day, which is fairly unlikely. Inaccurate or incomplete daily record of meals served. Reviews not being conducted or not conducted within the required timeline by the sponsor. Remember that 4th week review can be conducted anytime within the first 4 weeks and is required of all sponsors. Menus do not meet menu pattern requirements. Missing child nutrition label or product formulation statements for processed or engineered items. Allowing food items to be taken off site without being approved on the site application. Prior approval not granted for field trips. Notice of non-discrimination not included on program materials, and staff not appropriately trained or documented. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Kelly, and she is going to finish us up.
All right, thank you, Judy. Let me get the slides back up here, and we'll just keep rolling on and get things finished up. All right, so the slide that Judy just talked about regarding review findings, anytime one of our consultants is conducting a review, an administrative review of the Summer Food Service Program, and if there are review findings, sponsors are always offered the opportunity to correct those review findings. And within the e-review system, there is a place for all review findings to be noted, and then the sponsor's response to KSDE with regards to how they will correct the findings. And when findings are not corrected within the required timeline, or not to the satisfaction of Kansas State Department of Education, then what happens is we as a state agency will start the seriously deficient process. And this process was established to ensure compliance with USDA regulations and guidance to protect program integrity. And this is something that is more than likely new terminology for our school sponsors, because in the school nutrition programs, there is not a seriously deficient process. There is a seriously deficient process in the child and adult care food program. This does not happen very often because as a state agency, we take a lot of pride, and also our consultants work very hard to provide technical assistance to our sponsors in order to prevent this from happening. And so when a finding has been identified as rising to the level of seriously deficient, as I said before, there will be a corrective action plan that is developed by KSDE and provided to the sponsoring organization. And the sponsoring organization describes what actions they have taken or will take to correct each of the serious deficiencies that have been identified. And as I said before, there is a required time frame that this has to be completed. And sponsors will receive a letter from Kansas State Department of Education identifying and providing information about the serious deficiencies that were identified during the review, and then the sponsor goes in and completes a corrective action plan in the e-review. It's also important to know, oops, I skipped a slide here. With that letter, sponsors cannot appeal a seriously deficient determination, but in situations such as fiscal action or termination, sponsors can appeal that decision. And so, again, we don't just do this. We alert the sponsoring organizations of the deficiencies that have been identified and provide the sponsors with the opportunity to correct those findings. And as I started to mention, sponsors do have appeal rights, and sponsors can appeal the denial of a request for an advance payment, denial of claims for reimbursement. So some of you who are participating in this webinar may have had fiscal action assessed in prior summer food service program reviews, and anytime that KSDE has found an error that results in an overclaim payment or an underclaim payment, we do provide appeal rights for sponsors. Sponsors can also appeal the termination of participation in the summer food service program, denial of site applications. That's why we have a site application for all meal service sites within the CAN-CLAIM system. And then claims against a sponsor for remittance of payment. So if a sponsoring organization owes the state of owes Kansas State Department of Education, then they are provided the appeal rights. One thing that is really important to mention is that there is a process for sponsors to file an appeal, and it's very important that anytime a sponsoring organization wants to appeal a determination that is actually appealable by KSD, they must submit a written request for review within 10 calendar days following the date of the receipt of the notice of action. And this will, anytime a sponsor has been declared seriously deficient, again, that notification is provided in writing, sent by certified mail, and then also sent by email from Child Nutrition and Wellness. And the appeal rights are included in that letter. And so just to kind of wrap things up, that was a little bit kind of on the negative note. Again, I just want to point out that we do not have this happen very much in summer at all. We do try to work with our sponsors to provide the training and the technical assistance that is needed to prevent this from happening. But we just wanted to let you know that this is a process in the summer food service program, since many of you are school sponsors and this process is not in the school nutrition programs. and that anytime a sponsor is declared seriously deficient and terminated in the summer food service program, they are not able to participate in other child nutrition programs. So that is important to note. But in summary, we do want to recognize all the great work that our sponsors are doing, and we appreciate all your efforts to ensure children continue to receive healthy meals when school is not in session. Many of you are providing meals not only during the summer, but also after the end of the school day through the CACFP at-risk after-school meals. And we know that when children have access to healthy meals year-round, that not only does this help alleviate food insecurity and hunger, but it truly does help keep children primed and ready to go when school starts back up. And it also helps promote learning and growth and health in children all year round. So thank you for all that you do. And we do encourage you to reach out to any of our staff if you have questions about the summer food service program. We're always happy to answer any of your questions. And don't forget to check out our caneat.org website. There are all of the administrative and training forms that were mentioned in this webinar. They are located on caneat.org on the summer food service program website. And also too, USDA has a lot of really great resources. We do not have that link up here, but they have a plethora of resources for sponsors. And so we do thank you for everything that you are doing. And Arlene or Judy or Holly, is there anything that you would like to add before we sign off for the day? Anything that you ladies would like to add?
Just thanks for tuning in.
Yes, thanks for tuning in. And we do have the opportunity for all of our webinar participants to complete a evaluation, and we would really appreciate your participation in this evaluation, because we do want to know how we can improve our trainings and help better meet your needs as a sponsoring organization of the Summer Food Service Program. So please don't be shy. Please do complete this survey, and we hope that summer 2019 is an awesome summer for everyone, and thank you.